Welcome to Midweek Experiments in Faithfulness. This is a weekly facilitated spiritual practice with a Quaker flavor and an experimental ethos. My name is Lahari Indraganti, and I'm a program fellow here at Beacon Hill Friends House, which is a Quaker Center for Learning and Action, and a residential community of about 20 people who live according to Quaker values. Tonight, we have Christy Randazzo with the practice Sacred Days and Times. This midweek practice will be an exploration of the ways that setting aside certain days and times to remember people and events of significant spiritual importance can help us give deeper meaning to our days and offer intimate connection with the divine. I'm excited to introduce you to Christy. Christy Randazzo is a convinced friend and a member of the Haddonfield Friends Meeting in Haddonfield, New Jersey, USA. Christy is a theologian and a teacher whose work has been engaged in bridging the divide between the contemplative nature of theological writing with the active, lived theology of congregational life. Again, welcome. We're really glad you've joined us tonight. Christy, it's all yours.
So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself a little bit more, and then we're going to go into the very briefest of slideshows, mainly because I want to get some things, sort of maybe images in your head before we actually go to what we're going to be doing. So what we're looking at tonight is this question of sacred days and times. And I recognize all apologies to the Religious Society of Friends. There's a Quaker sort of aversion to recognizing specific times and places. And there's a long historical reason for that, but basically chalk it up to George Fox and his issue with, times and places in the earliest sort of time of Friends. Okay, he was sort of pushing back against something, and sort of what he pushed back on to a certain extent, I'd argue, maybe we threw something out at the same time that we, gained all of it, freedom of Quakerism. So I am somebody who has moved a great deal in their life. I started off, I was actually born in Boston. So every time I go up to Boston, even though I lived there till I was 3, I have this feeling of like, oh, hey, kind of like I'm home. And we have family who live on Martha's Vineyard. So I bought the cheesy sweatshirt and figured that, in honor of Boston, I'd wear it tonight. But over the years, all of the moves, the more that I got unsettled and uprooted, and literally uprooted in terms of place and time and context and, who I was, I felt like I needed to have something that gave me grounding, something that gave me a sense of sort of connecting to not only the earth as I experienced it as, it whipped around the sun, but also a rooting of, my history and who I was and my people and the work that I do and who I am in terms of my family and church community and what have you. So what I started doing was actually kind of noting down times that felt important to me through all the calendars that are involved in my life. Now to the slideshow. So when I talk about the calendars in our lives, what I'm sort of saying are the things that are in the background of our world, okay? So for example, this is a picture of my high school in Houston, Texas. And yes, it looked that grim from the outside, shall we say. So school calendar impacts your life, especially when you're a kid. And for me, it did significantly. September came and it felt like the newness of things. And then, you had all the way through the end of the May or June when school ended. And it felt like it was time had a sense of purpose and meaning in the space. Regardless of where I had moved to, even if I'd moved a year after I'd moved somewhere else, I always knew that the school calendar could root me. And then, over here on the left, you see the what's known as the liturgical calendar, sort of the calendar of the church year for the Roman Catholic Church, which has 4 colors on it. And, sort of every time that we go to mass and there's another color, another new color up on the altars, it sort of felt like, a passage of time as well. That calendar gave meaning and purpose to my existence, kind of framed who I was. And then, of course, we have the calendars of, the year, the sense of it being, September 27th today. And there's going to be September 28th and a Thursday tomorrow. That kind of framework of what calendar means. But I included a calendar in the bottom right that actually is the calendar that I think has had the most impact upon me as a person. I think it's going to be for you too, because we're all humans in space. We're in, surrounded by the air around us, surrounded by the climate around us, the atmosphere around us, what the trees look like, sort of how things flow and shift as the seasons change. So this is actually a picture of the Pocono Mountains, where I had family as well when I was a kid, and I go up there and see the forest change through the seasons. And it was this beautiful sort of sight of being, in this sort of spot above kind of this valley in a mountain. And I have memory of, specifically stopping and going, okay, that's, what fall looks like. That's what winter looks like, instead of experiencing that and kind of embedding it in my brain. So when I think of fall now, I think of it in relation to, these sort of moments when I was visiting my grandparents and my family in this beautiful part of the world. But then around 13, I started moving. And I was like, okay, I'm going to move to somewhere that has no climactic connection to New York or Massachusetts or any of the places I've lived before. I'm going to move to Alabama for a time during early high school. And oh my God, that was hot in a way that hot should not be hot. And then I moved down to Texas afterwards for the rest of high school. And as you can see down there, it is hotter than hotter possibly could imagine. There is no season in the same way that I understood seasons for most of my life. I felt unsettled. I felt a feeling that climate literally had changed on me, and what was right and good and how the world, that the year should flow, fell apart. Like, for example, I literally remember numerous Christmases wearing shorts in Houston, Texas. And that just doesn't feel right when you were raised in New York and Massachusetts. So, I always thought this idea of, rooting ourselves in the world around us, when climate events happen, like they have this summer, and it starts to feel weird and the world starts to, shift around us and the air doesn't feel right, we're actually mourning a loss of something. We're feeling like something is uncomfortable because it's not right. Our bodies just know the calendar of the year as we've been living it, and it feels comfortable. I started writing down the times that were important to me. So, in fall, what about fall, that fallness? What should fall feel like? Things like the sense of harvest and the reminder that all things will eventually pass on. And then I have moments that are, important for my career, like this one conference I go to. The idea of All Saints Day was really important to me as a kid, and it kept sticking through there. Leaf peeping, the vibe of crisp air, pumpkin anything, cinnamon, Thanksgiving, these things that my body experienced and craved in that season, that rooted me in time and space. And then, as you can see, it sort of went through the seasons, winter and then spring and summer. And these are just some of the times that I set up in my own thinking, in like what I want to have my time rooted in. Because again, when I moved and I left, and then I started moving and I kept moving, and I moved overseas, and I came back to the US, and I moved 3 different states when I came back, and things were constantly changing, but I always knew that there were certain things that would bind me and would root me into a sense of being in space, give me a sense of connection to the divine, and give me a sense of connection to a family that's much wider than me, that's much wider than just mom, dad, maybe uncle, but like something much bigger than that. And that sort of way of connecting and rooting in the world was something that was really important to me. So this idea of having times and seasons is something that we've kind of always had in our culture, in our world. We have harvest festivals, we have spring festivals and what have you. And I wanted to know if you would have, a way of thinking about this that, sounds kind of weird, but work with me. So think about time like a spiral. So as the seasons change, we're coming back around to fall again, but we're not in a circle. You are different. You have changed. You're coming back around to a spiral. You're a little bit farther on. You can shift your understanding of what is meaningful for you over time. If something worked for you when you were younger, the more that you change and move, maybe you don't think that holiday is important anymore and you don't hold on to it. You let it go because you have changed. I think about that. There's this image from the end of Interstellar, the movie, where you have Matthew McConaughey like flying down through like space time, and like, you know, he can sort of go to different times and places throughout, instead of these moments throughout the life of his daughter, and he's just kind of flying through time, and that kind of makes sense to me. You know, the idea that, you know, I know in 2 years my daughter's going to be leaving, you know, to go to college. So I have a sense of something being over and done. I have a sense that I can see, you know, I know what the springtime of 2025 is going to bring. There's going to be a big event, and I can change and adapt to that. I can sort of find a way to maybe make that interesting and different because I can see it. I can see it coming up. And I can also turn back and I can see previous falls and autumns and you know, what was meaningful for me then. So these memories also help me root in, you know, a space and time, even as climate change is happening all around me. So I wanted to really quickly, as I'm coming up on probably the very much end of my time here, what I want you to do for the next few minutes as sort of this practice is I want you to think about those moments in time, those things that root you in this place, at this juncture in your life, at this specific location on earth, wherever you are, and whatever gives structure and meaning to your life. You know, think about maybe the seasons and how what the seasons mean to you, what is important as the seasons change. You know, what days, times, or seasons are sacred to you? What do you hold to be incredibly important? Whose lives or life have impacted you in a meaningful and transformative way? You know, is there someone that you are like, yeah, I really want to remember the birthday of, I don't know, Dorothy Day or something, someone who is, you know, John Woolman, someone who is sort of connected to our past that you want to look at and go, wow, this person's awesome, and I want to remember them. What rhythms of the community, you know, however you define that, you know, your community of your friends, your community of your family, what, you know, how does that rhythm shift? You know, what are times that root you in where you are? Now, all of this is coming up to this sort of this culminating idea that what we're really talking about is what the Celtic people used to call thin places, places where it seems like the you know, the underworld or, you know, something of the divine is sort of cracking through into our world, and we are sort of coming closer to them. So we're a little closer to the divine. Things feel a little bit like they're more connected. You know, All Hallows Eve in sort of Celtic religion was sort of very important. That idea of like having that sort of that thin place in time, and they called it something else. But what moments are thin for you? That as they come around throughout the year, they feel special, they feel more sacred. And I'll just leave this up so you can keep seeing the questions I got.